Hello. The news from Russian-Ukrainian Warfront seems to connect with the events happening in Gaza. How is that? Well, let's first look at what Ukrainians did to the Russians. They used drones, asymmetric warfare to knock out 41 Russian planes on ground. This is a massive hit. Asymmetric warfare using small little drones flying at a high altitude, hitting with precision. One of the mightiest forces on the face of this earth actually taking the hit. For the Russians, that's a pretty big embarrassment. For the Ukrainians, that's a day of heroism, but the analysts say that it's not going to change much on the war front. Where it will change something is this narrative that the Russians were building, that the Ukrainians are powerless, that we are making an advance that the Ukrainians cannot roll back or stop, that we are winning the war. So the Ukrainian attempt to create some kind of a balance on the negotiating table, talks starting in Istanbul, essentially is an attempt to tell the world that we are not powerless, that we have wherewithal available to us in order for the Russians to take us seriously. So it is all about restoring some sort of a balance back into the equation of negotiations, because the world is driven by power motives. The one who has power over the other is always going to get the better part of the pie of resources, pie of negotiation results, pie of territory even. So don't think that Ukrainian drone attacks, spectacular as they are and productive as they are going to be really a change factor in the war frontier, because other array of weapons are being used in the warfare and not much is going to change there. Just to remind you that Russians on the ground offensive are gaining like 15 kilometers a day. That's a very fast advance, and they are moving very quickly towards their goal of conquering that area, Russian-speaking area, which they claim is to be theirs historically. So it's not going to change much, but where it will change is negotiations on the table, and the chair of the Ukrainians that looked like Lilliputian in its size is going to now look to be at par with the Russians. How does that connect with Gaza? Because in Gaza, you also see not just asymmetric warfare, but actually massive war crimes, because the Palestinians obviously stand no chance against the oppressive juggernaut and military might of the Israelis, who are testing every conceivable weapon as far as the Palestinians are concerned. Just to give you some harrowing figures about the casualties, let's take the most vulnerable group in the war, which is always either the children or the women. They are elderly as well, but in terms of vulnerability, children are the most vulnerable. So far, as we speak, in Gaza alone, 17,000 children have been killed, if you were to simply take one category. About 34,000 have been wounded, and these are wounds for life. They are maimed, their arms are blown away, their legs have been cut off, their sight is gone, some of them have become deaf. 1 million injuries that are going to reduce them really to nothing as they go through the rest of their lives. So far, about 2.1 million people are held hostage by Israel's siege. And the UN now calls this area the hungriest place on the face of this earth. In terms of marked territory that is acknowledged by the UN, Gaza is the hungriest place on the face of this earth, where an entire population is facing hunger. It has famine. And Israel, so brutal, so oppressive, so draconian, so heartless, continues to disrupt UN efforts to provide and disperse aid to these hungry people. And it continues to create so-called own distribution centers, which are manned by the Israelis. And take a guess, American mercenary contractors are standing on the aid distribution centers that Israel has allowed to function, replacing the UN aid distribution centers, which are truly professional, but they are not allowed to work. And the latest incident shows that when people went to these distribution centers, they were fired upon and many lost their lives. And this is something that the UN representatives have been talking about, that you are creating a crisis within a crisis. But Israel, regardless of the UN condemnation, regardless of the world's sense of outrage, which seems to be now happening at a very slow pace, continues on this path because the Palestinians, unlike the Ukrainians, do not have drones. They cannot carry out asymmetric warfare. While the tragedy of Gaza is going to be the most telling in terms of the inhumanity of Israelis towards the Gazans and the Palestinians, for decades and probably centuries to come, the most important thing and message that comes out of this entire comparison between how the Ukrainians are trying to restore balance on the negotiating table with the Russians and how the Palestinians are being pulverized by the Israelis, their children, particularly their women, is that those who do not have power to defend themselves will always be pulverized. This is the new world that we are living in. This is the world that old philosophers used to talk about. It is nasty, it is brutish, it is short, and it is inhuman. So if you look at the drone capacity that Ukrainians deployed, you would really wonder whether it will change the war matrix or not. It will not change the war matrix, but it will restore this perception about Ukrainian capacity that they still have a game to play or a card to play. Palestinians, unfortunately, have no cards to play. And the world continues to appease Israel because Israel is too powerful for the world to tackle at this point in time. That's the lesson that comes out of these two comparisons. Beyond that, obviously, there are other factors. But the ones who do not have power, unfortunately, do not have a future in this nasty, brutish, and short world.